Big Ten coaches on the move. So originally we were going to talk about the rumors of Steve Clinkscale and Mike Elston, among others, who could possibly be moving on. After I sent this show sheet to these guys, Mike Elston just decided to, I guess he didn't decide anything yet, but news came out that he is expected to join Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers. So obviously that looks like it has already happened, but we still have some other guys. Bill O'Brien possibly going to Boston College to be their new head coach. He's been on the job at Ohio State for like 2 or 3 weeks at this point. It's been rumored that Steve Clinkscale from Michigan is in talks with Jim Harbaugh as well. Mike Hart has still not signed his technical, joining the Michigan staff over there. So we don't really know what's going on with him, but it doesn't seem like he is for sure in yet. And then another one, newcomer to the conference, Chip Kelly is obviously, there's many reports out there about him not being happy about UCLA and the direction of the future that's going on there. So Max, we'll start with you. Which one of these exits or potential exits should the fans of these teams be most concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, at first, losing Steve Clinkscale and Mike Elston, losing 2 coaches off your staff at Michigan appears to be a big deal. But, Ariel as your head coach, your whole, it's a lot of roster turnover anyways at Michigan. So I feel like they're already kind of losing those 2 coaches is just another part of their offseason that they kind of had to expect. To me, I think losing Bill O'Brien from Ohio State, just because he just got there and he hasn't even really coached anything yet, leaving this late in the game, are they going to be able to replace just from within? Are they going to already look to hire someone else outside? It feels like if he leaves, that they're kind of in a really weird no man's land without having an offensive coordinator at this part in the season. You're approaching spring ball. It's still Ohio State. I'm sure they'll be fine, but to me, it just seems like a really awkward position to be in and not have an offensive coordinator this late in the game.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely interesting, and I don't know if it would even be resolved unless they found somebody to possibly do that. Before we move on to the next one, the Ohio podcast, who's got it better than us? Apparently the Chargers do. Oh well, BTB, beat those bums. I've not heard that one, Eric, so thanks for that. And then yes, I have the game on, Fisherman. Ohio State basketball just choked an 18-point lead. I can only laugh at this point. Yes, I'm sitting here as Zach was talking, thinking to myself, what is my life? We just lost to Indiana at home. This is not a basketball show, so I'll see.
There's going to be an emergency pod after this about how Chris Holtman needs to be fired.
Don't worry, we have our pod tomorrow night, the basketball pod. We'll get to all that. So Eric made it up. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate the creativity there. So, Kurt, these guys that I mentioned, Bill O'Brien, Steve Clinkscale, Mike Elston, Mike Hart, and Chip Kelly, your thoughts on which fan base should be the most concerned based off of them leaving or the potential of them leaving?
Well, I put, it sounds silly. They just want it all. I put just the combination of coaches that Michigan has already lost and is looking at potentially losing. Now, officially, Mike Elston is moving on. You just look at the resurgence of that program over the last 3 or 4 years, and it was really built on the toughness and just having superior talent in the trenches. I'm no Michigan insider, but I'm assuming their D-line coach had a pretty decent hand in building up that D-line to be as good as it was. And judging by Michigan's fans' reactions today to him leaving, I'm imagine that's going to be a tough gap to fill. So I got to go with Michigan just because, first year full-time head coach they got now and just having to replace all of these coaches and then also maybe having to focus on keeping your current players there that were committed to this program because of those coaches. So just a lot going on. And for that reason, I got to go with Michigan. I know they'll probably end up being fine. This is a go for fan talking, so I'm sure they'll point that out to me. But that's just, that just seems like they have the one the most going on. Chip Kelly wanting out of UCLA, I get it on his end because they clearly don't want him. It was basically announced that he was going to be fired after the USC game, and then they won, and then they're just like, well, okay, let's just bring up, we're gonna be moving to a new conference. Let's just keep him here, and then we'll go on from there. Like, I don't know, like I like Chip Kelly a lot. I know he's kind of gotten old here kind of quickly, it seems like, and maybe he doesn't like the constant recruiting that has to happen right now in the current state of college football. But So I don't know what UCLA is going to do, but they got some decent donors still out there, obviously being where they are. And so I think, long term, it just takes getting the right people in charge at that place. So, and I'm sure Michigan will be fine too. But like I said, I just feel like they got the most kind of going on, most kind of balls up there to juggle right now. So that's what I got.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting, and I second the Michigan thing. Again, I think, Sharon Moore will be fine. I don't think it's like doomsday or anything like that, but you would like for a first time head coach to be able to have some more stability. He does on the offensive end, which is good for him. Kirk Campbell is staying and things like that. And I think the tight end coach got moved over to, I can't remember his name, Newsom, I think it was. He's moving over from tight end to O-line, and they hired a previous Michigan coach to come in and be the tight end, Cazuela or something like that. I'm terrible with names if you can't tell. But he's coming in, and so the offensive side seems to be fine. It's just this defensive side that seems to be a little bit more concerning with what is going to happen with the coaches. Zach, I want you to talk a little bit about, because I know you followed this at least closely enough to be able to talk about it, the situation with Bill O'Brien. If he does leave, Chip Kelly possibly coming in there and being the offensive coordinator for Ohio State, because Chip Kelly just seems to be so upset. He may just come and be an offensive coordinator for Ohio State. What do you think about that situation, Zach?
I would be torn. Because on one hand, I think there are things that I would like to, and this is me maybe speaking more as an Ohio State fan than as a Big Ten guy. I would like to see Ohio State not revert to maybe spread tendencies, although I would like to see more QB run with Will Howard. But I think there are tendencies that Chip Kelly has as a play caller that I'm like, I think that was great maybe against lesser teams with not as good offensive and defensive lines, not offensive lines. But I think for a long time, I've wanted Ryan Day to get someone he trusts. And I'm not sure he trusts someone more than Chip Kelly as someone who mentored him for years. And I think it's intriguing. I'll be honest, I was never excited about Bill O'Brien, and I honestly don't understand why Bill O'Brien would leave Ohio State for Boston College. Like, I get being a head coach might be appealing, and it's in Boston, so I understand those things that appeal, but based off everything we just said about the Big Ten and the SEC breaking off and like the way of college football, I'm like, you want to go to a mediocre ACC team? What are you doing? Like, so to me, there's a part of me that's like, well, if he's going to make that decision, I'm not sure I want him as my offensive coordinator. So, like, I get it. Head coach, I get being in that area. So maybe that's probably not a helpful dig, but, I'm not super concerned about it, mostly because I'm like, I think there were good things about Bill O'Brien. I didn't think I thought there were things that were not great about Bill O'Brien. I think the same is true with Chip Kelly if he comes in. I'm like, I think there are good things about it, and I think there are things where I'm like, I think by the time we get to the Oregon game, I think people will probably be saying at some point, fire Chip Kelly, whether they win the game or not. I think that's gonna, like, there's going to be frustrations with any of these guys. So I think the big question is, do they beat Michigan and do they get to the playoff? Like, that's ultimately, like, if they don't beat Michigan, I don't really care who they hire. But yeah, so that's my best non-answer I can give you.
Well, Ryan Day has to beat Michigan for his job, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's been talked about on here multiple times. If he could go 11-1, but if he loses to Michigan,
it's over.
he's probably done. As crazy as that sounds, he's probably done. We got a few comments here from Fisherman I want to bring up. I agree, being the offensive coordinator, the offensive coordinator Ohio State, especially this year, is a better job than head coach at Boston College. There's more involved because of his family. Yes, I've stayed away from the family talk of Bill O'Brien just because, like, I don't think I'd want somebody talking about my family on a random podcast. And so, I just stay away from it. But if you're not aware of what's going on, Bill O'Brien has a son with a lifelong disease that requires constant care. And the doctor that he's always worked with, or one of the specialists for that disease, is up in Boston. And so the thought is that even though the job isn't the best, Bill O'Brien might not be able to say no to actually living around his son and his family up in Boston. And perhaps that's why he went back to the Patriots from the beginning. So
I want to withdraw my last comment then. I feel awful that I just said what I said. Oh, I appreciate that insight. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's cool. Like I said, I don't want to sit here and ask questions about like, what would you do if your child was, like, I'm not going to sit here and do that. Yeah. But if anybody isn't aware, that's kind of like what the theory amongst fans is he's not come out and said this publicly, but kind of the theory out there. Fisherman also says if Bill O'Brien leaves, Ohio State will be fine. I don't think they hire Chip, or I don't like if they hired Chip. Day is from the Chip tree. I actually agree with Fisherman here. Not a lot of Ohio State fans tend to agree with me, but I would not be happy if Chip was the offensive coordinator, simply because I've been in a situation where I've kind of like been a pseudo boss of somebody that I would consider my mentor. It's not easy. And it's really not easy to tell somebody what to do who's been telling you what to do all of your life, kind of giving you advice. Like, it feels like it wouldn't go well. And so
who would be your pick?
Who would be my personal pick?
Yeah.
Probably Jason Candle or Joe Moorhead at this point. I wouldn't hate Paul Chryst. I don't think it would be a good hire, but I wouldn't hate it. I would dislike the Chip Kelly hire the most, though, out of all of them. So, and then one last one, and then we'll move on. This was when I think we were talking a little bit more about Michigan, but Fisherman says, but Michigan could be in trouble. How many connections does Moore have? I wonder how their portal in the spring will be. That was my other thought with losing some of these coaches, is like, Sherrone Moore will get coaches because Michigan will, be able to pay money for coaches. And the rumor was that they offered Mike Elston to be the highest paid defensive line coach in the nation. So if they have enough money to do that, they have enough money to hire other coaches. And Sherrone Moore came in for like less than half for what they sold, what they were going to pay Jim Harbaugh for. So they have money to throw around. But yes, you're exactly right, Fisherman. Who are they going to get to make that happen? And Eric, I don't think this is happening. We talked about this on the show. Don't forget about a possible Kevin Wilson returning. I would love it. I don't think it's going to happen. And then we got Joseph here. Ohio State getting rid of Ryan Day would be sweet music to Michigan fans. They like to talk about how Ryan Day's soft. So I don't know. So I don't know if it would be sweet music to him, unless it's just a front and they really, well, I don't know. But, yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. Good to get that info from the chat. Thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.